Once, two boys stood at the edge of their small village, staring down a dusty road that split in two. Their names were Adrian and Marcus. They'd grown up together, shared the same school bench, stolen mangoes from the same orchard, and dreamed under the same night sky. On the morning they turned 20, they made a promise. Adrian pointed toward the tall buildings just visible on the horizon. "I'm going to the capital," he declared. "I want power, position, and influence." Marcus looked the other way, toward the rolling hills. "I'm heading to the countryside towns. I want to build something with my hands, something real." They clasped hands. 15 years, Adrian said. "We meet back here in 15 years and see who we have become." 15 years, Marcus agreed. And with that, they walked away in opposite directions. Years flew by. Adrian's sharp mind and fierce ambition carried him swiftly through the ranks of government. He worked tirelessly, studying policies, negotiating contracts, and slowly climbing the ladder of authority. By the time he was 35, he had become the Royal Minister of Commerce, overseeing trade deals worth over 20,000 gold crowns a month. He lived in a grand residence with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and servants who announced his arrival in every room. Marcus, meanwhile, became an apprentice to an old craftsman in a quiet mountain town. He learned to shape wood and steel, to carve doors, forge hinges, and repair farming tools. His hands grew rough and calloused. His shoulders broadened. He eventually opened a modest workshop near the river, earning just enough to support himself and help his neighbors when they couldn't afford to pay. Exactly 15 years later, Adrian arrived at their old meeting spot in a sleek carriage pulled by 4 white horses. 2 assistants followed him, holding documents and polished briefcases. Marcus was already there, sitting on a flat rock, eating a simple meal of bread and cheese. They stared at each other for a long moment before bursting into laughter. "Minister Adrian Hale," one assistant announced proudly. Adrian waved him quiet. "Go back to the carriage and wait." He turned to his old friend. "You haven't changed much." Marcus grinned. "You've changed enough for both of us." They embraced warmly. "I want you to see my life," Adrian said, his voice full of pride. "Come stay with me for a few days." Marcus hesitated, looking down at his worn boots. "Will your marble floors survive these?" "They'll manage," Adrian laughed. The next morning, a polished carriage arrived at Marcus's small workshop. Villagers gathered, whispering in amazement as Marcus climbed inside. Adrian's mansion stood on a hill overlooking the capital, a monument to his success. Golden gates opened as they approached. Inside, perfectly trimmed gardens and fountains shaped like swans greeted them. Guards stood at every corner. Marcus stepped onto the marble floor, almost afraid his boots would leave a mark. Servants rushed forward. "Would you prefer herbal tea or imported citrus infusion?" one asked. "We have silk robes prepared for your bath," said another. Marcus just blinked. "I usually wash at the river." Adrian smiled. "You'll get used to it." That evening, Marcus attended a lavish banquet where foreign delegates discussed shipping routes, taxes, and trade tariffs. Adrian barely ate. Every few minutes, someone interrupted him with an urgent matter. Documents needed signatures. Decisions needed approval. Disputes demanded resolution. When they finally returned home long past midnight, Adrian collapsed into a velvet chair. "You live like a king," Marcus observed. Adrian let out a quiet, weary sigh. "Sometimes I feel like I work for everyone but myself." The next morning, before sunrise, Adrian was called to an emergency council meeting. A major trade agreement was at risk. He left without even having breakfast. Marcus wandered through the grand mansion alone. He saw the magnificent dining hall, the indoor swimming chamber, the private library filled with leather-bound books. Everything was stunning, and everything was strangely empty. Responsibility doesn't sleep. A few days later, Adrian said, "Now it's my turn. I want to see your world." They traveled to the countryside. The fancy carriage couldn't cross the narrow wooden bridge, so they had to walk the last mile. Marcus's workshop was simple but alive. Wooden beams, iron tools hanging neatly on the walls, and a stone furnace that glowed with a warm, steady fire. Awkwardly, Adrian rolled up his fine silk sleeves. A farmer entered, holding a broken plow. "Marcus," he said, his face worried, "I can't afford a new one this season." Marcus examined it carefully. "Don't worry, I'll fix it. Pay me after the harvest." Adrian whispered, "You'll lose money that way." Marcus smiled. "I gain something else." Throughout the day, a steady stream of villagers came and went. A carpenter needed sturdy nails. A mother needed a repaired kettle. A stable owner required fresh horseshoes. Marcus worked steadily, sweat mixing with ash on his face. Adrian tried to help but struggled with the heavy hammer. By evening, they sat by the river, eating boiled potatoes with butter and salt. Adrian took a bite and closed his eyes. "This tastes better than any royal feast." Just then, a young boy ran up to them. "Marcus, thank you for fixing our door. My father says you saved us from sleeping in the cold." The boy ran off, and Adrian watched him go, a thoughtful look on his face. The next morning, they delivered tools to neighboring farms. Everywhere they went, people greeted Marcus with genuine warmth and respect. "He's the best craftsman in 9 villages," one woman said proudly. Another added, "Without him, half our harvest tools would break." Adrian turned to Marcus, his voice filled with a new understanding. "You're as important here as I am in the capital." Marcus chuckled. "Importance is relative." That afternoon, Adrian asked quietly, "Have you ever wished for more money? More status?" Marcus wiped his hands on a cloth. "Sometimes, but not enough to stop loving what I do." Adrian looked at his own soft, unscarred hands. "I handle contracts worth 30,000 gold crowns," he said slowly. "But I've never held something I built myself." That night, sitting by the fire, Adrian confessed, "I thought success meant power, wealth, and recognition. But watching you, I realize success also means freedom. You sleep peacefully. You laugh easily. You belong here," Marcus replied gently, "and you hold the future of trade and thousands of families in your decisions. Without your work, the kingdom would struggle." They fell silent, understanding something deeper about each other and about themselves. The next morning, Adrian made a proposal. "Come work for the royal workshops," he said. "The army needs strong armor and weapons. The navy needs durable anchors and chains. If you lead a team, you can earn more, train apprentices, and still support these villages." Marcus thought carefully. "And who will fix old kettles and broken plows? We can set up a branch workshop here," Adrian suggested immediately. "We'll hire and train young apprentices right from these villages." Weeks later, the royal general himself came to inspect Marcus's work. The blades he'd forged were sharp and perfectly balanced. The armor joints moved smoothly, without a single weak point. "You are exactly the craftsman we need," the general declared. Marcus agreed, but only on the condition that he could continue to train local youths and serve the nearby villages. The kingdom flourished. Trade expanded under Adrian's guidance. Farms prospered with Marcus's reliable tools. Soldiers carried stronger weapons. Ships sailed with sturdier chains. Adrian remained minister, negotiating treaties and protecting the economy. Marcus became the master craftsman of the royal workshops, mentoring dozens of apprentices. Years later, they returned again to their old meeting spot. Adrian still wore elegant robes, but his hands now bore the faint calluses from his occasional work beside Marcus. Marcus wore simple clothes, but his workshop network now employed over 50 craftsmen across 10 villages. 15 years ago, Adrian said, "I thought success meant standing above others." Marcus smiled. "And I thought it meant standing alone." They both laughed. A group of young apprentices approached Marcus with respect. A messenger bowed deeply to Adrian, handing him urgent letters. Both men stood tall, masters of their own worlds. Adrian spoke quietly. "It is neither wealth nor title that makes a man important." Marcus finished the thought. "It is how honestly and excellently he does his work." The wind moved gently across the fields. Two boys had once walked in opposite directions, seeking success. They discovered that success wasn't about gold or iron, not about marble halls or smoky workshops. It was about purpose, and purpose, when pursued with integrity, makes every person minister or craftsman equally valuable in the grand design of life. Thanks for watching.